Hello, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're watching or listening this podcast from, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to a brand new edition of Social Confoes. And today we're gonna really have some fun, right, Diego?
Yes, and as you noticed, we started a bit later, but we are flexible with our schedules as always. But yeah, we have another interesting guest today with us. I've known her from, I think, maybe 5, 6 years now. She'll correct me later. But for a few years, I know Julie since she was interested in programming, started with websites, and I've seen her journey through, from the basic web development stuff to kind of trying, participating in hackathons,
To
participating,
basically winning them all.
yeah, winning them all, proving that it's not just boys or men's space, the IT space, being a role model for young women, and kind of breaking barriers in the IT and tech industry, especially here locally in the region and in Suriname. So we have with us tonight Julie Sundar. And Julie, welcome to Social Convos.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Julie is a very busy and active individual in the space, and she kind of has her own curriculum now, her own class, where she teaches young girls and women, not just young, actually from any age, about the developments in tech, programming. Uh, yeah, we can go on with it. But Julie, welcome. How was your training today? Because when you were scheduling, you said you had a training. So tell us, what's it like to teach girls from a young age, ranging from 5, 6 to older individuals, older than you even. I've seen in some of the classes.
Oh, yes. We're actually in the phase of my training where my students will be graduating Friday. One of the groups, which is the third edition of our InnoStarter group. In the InnoStarter, we teach introduction to building embedded systems. So programming, 3D designing, and by the end of the 3 to 4 months, our students can build an entire embedded system. So right now, I'm scheduling the students in so they can finalize their projects and be ready for the graduation ceremony.
Could you
It, Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
could you quickly elaborate what you mean with it, embedded system? What should someone imagine when they hear embedded system?
Yes. So we are teaching students how to build. Let's say, for example, right now the theme is mechatronics and robotics. So we're teaching them how to build mobile rovers. So driving rovers around the Arduino Uno microcontroller. So they can build a mini robot that drives and can function either over Bluetooth or with self-embedded code. And it could use a sensor to detect what's happening around it and just navigate on its own. And for example, they that's the base for the rover, and they can add an additional feature. So some students would make a dispenser on it. Some students made a following robot that would follow them when they walk. Some students would make a security kind of little bot that detects if somebody is near or not, etc. So they're just using their creativity to add on the base of the rovers. Yeah.
So I do
That
want
was
to
the
ask
theme for this
a
one.
question. Like, is there a certain theme that you, because there's a curriculum, of course,
Mm-hmm.
based on what you guys give them to learn. So where does that, I wouldn't say necessarily say inspiration, but is there some broader picture of like learning these skills, why you learn certain skills at a certain point in time? And like to give like somebody who has like no tech background and an idea of where you start and in 5 years, 10 years time, where what kind of things are you building with those skills?
Okay, so yes, our the base has always been to build Internet of Things solutions, and as we know, there's billions of Internet things connected to the internet. And our the community, our sector in Suriname, it was very low level. Like the students were not developers yet. It takes time to develop their skills. So from the beginning, when I started, I obviously had no background in ICT as well, so I had to self learn a lot of things. So after graduating Fab Academy and been certified to become a maker, and we got sponsored as well. I said I want this to teach students, young ladies in Suriname, to do the same thing as I did. But the Fab Academy was a 5-month program, very intensive, and within 5 months you have to build an entire Internet of Things prototype. So I know for sure these young women here would not have that skill. So from there we derived the Starter, which is a step down, that so they will cover all the introductory skills stuff like electronics, the programming, the digital fab. And after they develop their skills to a certain level there, they can continue into the boot camp where they can build the prototype end to end. So it takes time to develop their skills. So we have to constantly break the curriculum down into smaller sections so that we can train them and make sure they complete it at the end. Yeah.
So from my understanding, it's kind of getting to that level of to be able to compete or follow at the level of a Fab Academy. And for those listening in, the Fab Academy or the Fab Lab network, if I'm understanding
Mhm.
it correctly, it's like one of the world's biggest organizations, kind of looking into developments on fabrication, Internet of Things,
Yes.
robotics, all those things
Yes.
combined.
Yes.
And you yourself have, I think it was a few years back, right, that you participated in that.
Yes. In 2019, I graduated. Yes.
What
So
during
wait,
that?
what did you build? I'm just curious to know what was the end product that you built.
So I built an IoT for agriculture solution. So I built my own PCB board. I designed it from software, fabricated using the CNC machine, soldered the components, program it. So I had multiple sensors and actuator nodes that can communicate to a centralized node over Wi-Fi. So no matter how big or small your farm is, you can scale up and automate your farm and receive that data and automate, monitor and control, sorry, small, medium, or large scale farms. Yes,
Okay,
so
so
that's
And
you
that
could
was
you
custom built, like.
custom. I built it from scratch. The everything was from scratch.
so basically it's like knowing when
Yeah,
to water the vegetables and those kind of things as well.
yeah, and control.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
and
with a
sense
complete
as well.
dashboard. Oh, that's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, following on, during your experience at the Fab Academy, building this agriculture system that you could scale, we'll follow up on the other experience after that in a bit. But looking at that through a lens from where we're coming from here, South America, was there anything in particular that opened your eyes, like, oh, this is a whole new world, the possibilities? What's something that you saw during that experience at the Fab Academy, like that, like you were like, wow, this is something we gotta do, or kind of inspired you to do what you're doing now?
It really was the thing that I learned the most is working together. You know how important it is to work together to be able to reach higher grounds. Fab Academy is such a large community, and everybody worked together in their own community to achieve a bigger goal, and that's the culture I kind of try to implement in what I actually do with my students here. If you work alone, you can reach to a certain level, but if you work together, we could reach different regions, expand locally, I mean, and even regional. And that's what we've been doing when we compete in the competitions as well.
Is there a particular example that you could give us how the community within the academy kind of work together? Guys, I know there's, you have 3D modelers, you have um, PCB builders, and you're kind of doing, touching on every aspect of it a bit, but there are specialists in every section. So could you give us an example maybe of that?
Yeah, for example, while we were busy working in Fab Academy, we were collaborating with fellow fabbers in the Netherlands and in French Guiana, etc. And because of their help, we were able to graduate and all of us together. Because we were starting out, we were pioneering with Fab Academy in Suriname. It was the first time. We were collaborating with Suriname and French Guyana. It wasn't just us alone. And we had limited resources, or we didn't have all the machines and all the components. We barely made it because we were actually at the deadline of being able to even do Fab Academy. So with the help of our fellow Fabbers from the Netherlands and also French Guiana, we were able to complete it. And we are here today
Quickly
because of
shout
them.
out from French Guyana as you were saying that Marlon saying he's jumping in to say a big up, and also a big up from Rajiv saying that you're doing amazing work.
Thank you.
So I just for people that don't understand, because I think we're still, a lot of people aren't aware of these opportunities, and that you could actually learn how programming works in Suriname. Like if there's somebody who's watching who's like interested or wants to have their children pick up and learn programming, would you say there is a certain age, that group that's fit for following these sessions? Or are you saying like no, children can do it as well? And what can people expect? Because like myself, I want to jump in and I want to be able to build something, but there's a learning curve as well.
Yes.
So where do you start if you're interested? Where do you start, and how, at what point do you consider it being serious to spend more time on it?
Okay, from my experience, I'm speaking from mentoring ladies and young girls and women in ICT. I've taught Robo Kids, which is from 6 to 10 years old, and we taught them programming with Legos, drag and drop, Scratch, and that's for getting the kids to just introduce them to coding and the whole logic behind putting things together, the logic together. But in my opinion, when you're getting into the serious programming, there is an age group. And for me, the age group is 14 plus. From piloting with kids that are a bit younger, it gets challenging if you want to do make serious embedded systems. Because with programming, it requires math as well as iterating and practicing and troubleshooting. And a lot of students that think it's just for fun. So you're just playing with little robots and stuff. That's the misconception. It's not true. So you get really excited and think I'm going to play with a robot and this thing is just going to work on its own. No, even though I teach these kids and it looks simple, the coding is actually pretty advanced. And the way I analyze my students, if I analyze that, oh, this student is not as maybe determined, not determined, but curious as the other, I will keep the code not so advanced for them. I keep it on the surface level. But those students that are curious and want to continue and want to do more, you can always go in depth with it. And
Okay,
with the
now
embedded, yeah,
now I
yeah,
want
yeah,
to jump
yeah,
into
yeah.
a less serious question. What's the angriest you have gotten because your code wasn't working?
The angriest. Maybe not. I don't know if I got angry, but I just don't sleep. I would not sleep, and then I probably might get cranky because I won't give up, and that's the thing. I will stay and work until I probably crash until it works. And then I'm happy I have my mentor to assist me if I'm almost like, yeah, I'm ready to give up. But yeah, it gets frustrating. But the flip side to that is most of the time it works when you actually take that break and then you look at it again. So that's kind of like the
Yeah, you kind
opposite
of need
side.
a fresh pair of eyes,
Yeah,
or
yeah, but
a reset,
yeah,
take a walk or something.
yeah.
Um,
Sometimes you're like, oh, it's just something so simple. I just know it's something simple.
yeah, if you're staring at a screen too long, you kind of lose a sense of what's going on. But
Yeah.
coming back to that experience from the Fab Academy, and I want to zoom in particularly on how you've built the curriculum, because you said you saw the complexity from Fab Academy, and like the level gap that there was for new people here. So
Mhm.
could you walk us through the process of how you went about kind of dumbing down or simplifying the curriculum and breaking it down into bite-sized pieces so people could get started, and kind of what you've learned through that process?
Yes, in Fab Academy was literally 5 months long, and by the end of that 5 months, you have to have covered knowing how to build an embedded system, designing your own PCB from scratch, programming it, do networking, learn how to work with all the machines in the labs, like the lasers, CNC, 3D printers, etc., within just 5 month period. So I stretched that curriculum for a year instead of 5 months, and I took it a bit slower. Like for example, I stressed more on the embedded with the students in the first 2 months, and then I made the program a little bit less intensive for when they have to work with the machines. Because in Fab Academy, we have to figure everything out on our own. You have a mentor, but most of it is you finding it out on your own. But now they have us who already had experience, so we make kind of like a program and kind of like mini manuals for them to also follow. And I also schedule more sessions for them to coach them in class and train them. So it's not that they have to figure everything out by themselves. So it's much easier for these students.
So this makes me wonder, does the challenge of figuring it out yourself kind of enhance the learning experience or not?
Of course it does.
What has been your
But
observation on the groups you've been getting in?
oh, the groups that I've been getting in, or the previous groups you mean?
Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
comparing it from the
Yeah, of
curious types
course,
and
from
those
your
who kind
personal
of, yeah.
experience to also your students. Yeah.
Yes, okay, well, I'm going to speak about the bootcamp students because it's on the same level as the Fab Academy. For me, of course, I love a challenge and I learn a lot more when I'm challenged and after I complete the task at hand. But I have to also understand that all my students are the same or like me. You have to have a certain drive and a certain passion for IT or ICT or what you do before you can take up a certain level of challenge. So some of my students, yes, there is a learning curve, but there's also a curve where they might get frustrated and hate the whole experience if you push them too hard. And I've had that too from my personal experience. So I have to constantly balance between each student of mine to know how I push them, how they would receive the information, and how they would act, or how would they receive the training material. I mean, in my program. I want them to have a good experience as well as receive the material I'm giving them. Yeah.
So I have to ask this because, and I'm jumping back in because for outsiders, for non-techie people, I mean, the
Mhm.
Internet of Things is just my phone can connect with my refrigerator and those kind of things. Because when it comes to tech, like especially Internet of Things, for most people like myself, we're gonna connect it to something we're gonna practically use at least on a daily or a weekly basis. It's very hard to process when you're not a tech person, like how these uh, solutions are for businesses, and whether it's farming or like more technical things that are not related to, again, I'm from a communications perspective. And like, is it easier for people to work on projects that are somehow like consumer related compared to like farming or more the technical side, or is that a myth?
Okay, yeah. So when you look at the things that the students are probably building, you will probably be like, oh, we can just buy this for so much cheaper and it's already made, etc. But what you have to understand, the goal has always been to develop the ICT sector in Suriname. And if nobody tries to develop the sector, we will never get to the level in Suriname where we can actually fabricate for complete solutions and sell them or bring them to market. Somebody has to do that work. And from where we began, where I didn't know anything about ICT, to where I have so many students that are at the level of 11-year-old winning first place from a competition like with PTC students and university students. I think we're making strides, and also coming first and second place in an Caribbean competition from 20 islands. I mean, somebody has to do the work, and I'm excited to see where we will be in a few years, because we keep moving forward. you know you're not going to wake up one day and be able to build a complete solution that you can bring it to market. No way, and not in our community. You have to build it before you can get there. So I think
Yeah.
that's the point we have to make, and the view we have to be looking at. Yeah. and especially for the women in the sector. I know the man has dominated the ICT sector, but the women has to get to that level as well.
I somehow think that you're also thinking more of solutions that are valuable for everyone.
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit, yeah, but that's maybe a misconception of mine. But it does feel like women in general, when they approach tech, they much more look from it from a solution for everyone kind of perspective.
Yeah, and a lot of women, when they get involved in this sector, a lot of them want to learn to also teach their children. And for example, my oldest boot camper, she has a son that has dyslexia. So she built a solution that would help him read and write, and she got traction for that, and a lot of people wanted to buy her solution. But because we're not at that level yet where she can bring it to market, we will have to iterate with her a few more times before she can. But her solution was a very good one, and qualified to be sold. She could bring it to market. Yeah.
Yeah, you make a great point there that we need to start building and kind of so we don't fall in the trap of only being consumers because it's already happening with so many things. And
Yeah.
the tech space is ever evolving, ever kind of the the physics of progress kind of depend on the heavily, I won't say heavily, but depend a lot on developments within the tech space. And if you look at problems, solutions are usually pretty simple to do. And when you look at what's at the market, they kind of come with complete systems, and then you look at the price tag that's associated with it to implement it, and then it doesn't fit or match the scale or the problem that you're trying to address in a rural area, or on a farm, for example. So
Yes.
from that perspective, I totally agree that having that base level of fundamental understanding on how to build these things is a necessity. And coming back to that example you mentioned from your student that kind of built this tool for her son, uh, you said it wasn't ready yet for market. So if you look at the gap that needs to be filled from prototype to getting something like that to market, what are things that are still missing or that would need to be worked on or focused on in this next step?
So we're working on that right now. But Mr. Boomsma, Theo, has the Tech Starter, where students can enroll from the Codette's bootcamp into the Tech Starter to iterate a few more times on their prototype, and get the training, the business training, and the last leap before they can bring it to market. For example, we have machines in the lab that can build prototypes, but they're not ready for production. So, for example, if you have a design, you'll probably send it to China to be fabricated and send it back here, that type of thing. If you want to have 1,000 pieces, you can't fabricate that in the IoT lab, for example. So that's what a factory or something. We don't have that here. So that's the last.
So so but so and then of course you get another kind of prisoner's dilemma to which direction you're gonna go. You're gonna say either like we're gonna do these niche solutions that are maybe a little bit harder to more, not necessary that you have to pay more for them, but they're a little bit harder to get, or say like, yeah, but we still also want to have a solution that's like mass production. Like how do you balance that when you have limited resources, and you actually have to decide like, are we going to go a direction which is a little bit niche, but then we have something that it's actually ready for the market, or that you're like, no, but we need this solution in Suriname, and we also need a bigger investment.
Usually when students, or when we're thinking about building solutions, we're not thinking about building a solution for America, or we're thinking about building solution for our local market, from our community or regional. But from one of my experience, for example, when I was telling you guys about the IoT for agriculture solution that I made, I got selected to go to the Pitch Agri Hack in Kigali, Rwanda. And I realized that my solution was multiple sensors and actuators to cover a large scale farm, etc. And I had no market for it here. But when I went to Africa, they had one sensor and one actuator, and they had a million customers for it. So I'm like, we can build solutions here and start focus on a market maybe in Africa, and of course, if we want to fabricate these things again, like I said again, 1,000 pieces, if we're talking about it now, we're gonna have to design the boards and stuff here and send it probably to a factory maybe in China to produce them, if we would like to get that many pieces, because we are not there yet. But we would love to have a bigger lab here where we can produce these things, on another standard instead of prototype phase. But yeah, everything takes time, and we would love to get the investment to do so. But yeah, it's not one, two, three. It's a
Yeah,
work in progress.
I was about to. The next step is bringing the factories here, because kind of what like kind of that's the cycle of how the development works. Kind of you build first the in your local area, you build and then outsource it, and you slowly build the kind of the industrialized version of it to scale up. And
Yeah.
China is kind of now, I think they're also kind of starting to taper away from that stage and going more high end. And a lot of is being outsourced to other regions like Vietnam, etc. as well, for mass production, low cost. Um, I think as a nation, we need to, or as an industry, we also need to look at, do we want to go that route to become a mass producer of certain types of um, boards or electronics, as you mentioned, or do you want to specialize, as Jean-Luc mentioned, into sector development? I bring this up because the Netherlands, for example, a lot of innovation actually comes from the Netherlands, where they design these things, and it gets outsourced to larger companies. And for a small nation as Suriname, I think that's also a possibility. So, what's your take on your stance on that? Should we go the direction of kind of going through mass production, or double down on designing innovative solutions, even if it's not for a local problem, but kind of offloading it to a country like Africa, Rwanda in Africa, as you mentioned before? How do you see that?
um, I think we should be focusing on building innovative solutions. I mean, that's what we've always been doing. We have a lot of creativity, and from what I've seen, a lot of these students have already built creative solutions for problems that we have locally. For example, in the last Hackatopia, a group of kids, 11, 15, 17 years, they won first place for building a respirator for example, the girl, Shanika, she pitched that in case her grandma gets COVID and needs one. So they build a respirator. It's not fully automated, it's manual, but it would save lives. So it's for relevant problems, and it's an innovation that would save lives. So, and yes, and the next step would be, if you come up with an innovation that requires us to produce more of it, yeah, send it off to be manufactured. If we don't have the facility here, it would be a great to be able to manufacture it here, do everything in our country.
How
But yeah,
far along are we? Like from, if you have to do like 0 to 100%, 100% being we are fully ready to send out prototypes to get them produced outside and bring them back and put them on the market, and that's 100%. How far along are we in that process at the moment?
we have already designed multiple boards that can already be shipped to produce. And solutions could be ready in like a month or two. We are there, but it's about iterating and seeing, do we have a market for it here, or do we have to go regional to get more, reach more of the market, or go to Africa. It depends on on
And how do you balance the funding? Because of course the ideal situation is you get the money to actually develop and research, but in reality that's not always the case, or it comes but in trenches, and then you have a certain time when you have to even go into your own pocket some cases to develop something, unfortunately. So how much support has there been for these kind of projects in the world? Is there enough are there enough opportunities, and how well aware of are we of those opportunities for like international grants to kind of develop these solutions?
Okay, I can't speak for in the world, but I can speak from my personal experience. So when I started, it was just passion, and I did it out of my own pockets. I would sit in my brother's half done kitchen and make videos and editing it, even though it was terrible, just to send my message out and show young ladies that hey, get educated, get into tech, don't be afraid, and inspire them. And I can say I've been very maybe blessed is the word that there was a lot of people that saw my that believe in what I was doing, and I've been funded since the beginning. There's not one day that we had to struggle for funding. We were sponsored by the U.S. Embassy, Cosmos Energy, now Tulo for 2 more years. So because when you see the impact that what we're doing we have on the students, from all ages, especially the women from 14 to all the way 50, you can see that it's not just that we're playing a game here. They are being educated, their skills are being developed. Most of my students that are not even graduated yet, they get hired instantly. Most of my bootcamp students got hired before they graduated. So it's a huge impact on not just in the training, but and also we mentor these students not only during the training program, but also after they're done. They come back and we mentor them to decide what they want to continue to do. If they want to get pursue a tech career, if they want to join the other programs, if they want to compete in competitions. So it's an entire path that um, we guide them and mentor them in. Yeah. So.
Speaking of the hiring that you mentioned, I want to know like how is the landscape at what kind of types of jobs are we looking at that these people, these who have completed the course, get hired for? Because as we mentioned before, the space is kind of fairly new,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to match that with the skills and the job opportunities because I am not so familiar with that, at least from personal experience.
Yeah, for example, some of my students they got hired for being lab managers at the other at labs, and as web developers. Some of them work for us as well. Yeah, while we do projects like trainers as well. So yeah.
I do want to jump into that because you mentioned web development. If we look at embedded systems versus web development, like what are some similarities and where are some actually major differences between the two?
Yeah, in the InnoStarter, we teach them to build embedded systems. But in the Codette Bootcamp, you teach them how to build Internet of Things solutions, so web and embedded, communicating with each other. The difference is embedded is without the internet, so C code in the controller itself. It doesn't need to be connected to the internet, and with the web, I guess it's mobile apps, websites, a dashboard,
Yeah.
receiving the data from the system,
The way I see it, the
or you
web
can control
interface
it.
is
Yeah,
more like the consumer
yeah,
level,
yeah.
right?
I
So
guess I'm speaking very technical, but
you
yeah.
need something friendly for
Yeah,
the non
sometimes
non.
Julie, we have to break it down into smaller
I'm
pieces.
sorry. I'm
It's okay.
sorry.
It's
I
okay.
had
Yeah,
that.
so that's why I'm repeating. Like from what I understand, the web interface is more like for the consumers, like Shanduk, for example, a friendly interface
Yeah.
that he can see
Yeah.
like, oh, if I click this, this goes. But you don't necessarily need the thorough understanding of how the circuits talk to each other to execute the command, for example.
Yeah.
And especially if you want to go to mass market adoption and finding a market to drop it off, I think that part plays a very important role to polish at a later date, because that's when you really, really, as you said, need to iterate and see how people react to
Your
the different
solution.
solution. Yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
and
Iterating
You
with your
know,
customers to make.
there's one thing I really love about this, and I'm not sure, but it's from my perspective. I feel like the great thing about these solutions and this kind of technical developments is that you build something from scratch. And the first time that you realize that you coded something, and because you coded and gave a specific command, and it actually works, I think that's one of the most underestimated feelings in the world. It's one of the best feelings there is. So I'm really excited when you talk about like how many people are actually getting into this, and that there are opportunities, and that actually, for me, one of the best things to hear is that these people get hired instantly, which again puts like me on this, yeah, devil's advocate situation, into saying like, um, aside from hiring, are there enough developers that end up actually going through to build something bigger? And it doesn't have to be that that person becomes an entrepreneur and starts a business out of out of the skill set, but just saying like, okay, this is fun, but I want I want to build something that drastically changes lives. Like for instance, the woman who was looking for dyslexia solutions for her child.
So your question is if there are enough
Yeah.
of
So
those
what
type
are
of.
so can you share like I'm not sure. I don't know if there are NDAs or things that that we have to make sure that they are still in progress. So you cannot openly speak about them. But what are like some solutions that we already have in Suriname, that were built in Suriname, that we're not aware that we're already on this level?
um like I mentioned, this is we completed the first boot camp, and this is going to be the second one. And the Inno Starter, this is the third pilot. So in the Inno Starter programs, they're building embedded systems. So very um, the students are now getting involved, so they're touching introduction level. So after that, they have to get into boot camp. So if you're asking me if they're building solutions that are um, I don't know, what did you mention?
Yeah, I'm really, what I'm wondering is, see, again, it's more of a devil's advocate question,
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
like
go ahead.
they're starting, they're
Mhm.
learning, and as soon as they reach a level that they're ready to like come up with a solution that we really need, like even if it's just a simple automation that's everybody's waiting for it, but it just doesn't come. But exactly at the point where they are, that they are actually capable of building that thing from scratch, they get hired to a big company.
Oh, okay, that's what you mean.
So
Well,
I'm wondering like, is there enough opportunity for those that are really good to dive deeper into the tech instead of getting like a good corporate job where they can grow as well, but maybe it distracts them from actually bringing a solution to Suriname that we really need at the moment. And
well,
again,
I'm
it's a
a
devil's advocate
yeah.
question. I'm not saying that that is the case.
But obviously, the end goal is to be able to develop all of these students' skill to a certain level where they can just build solutions, and we can, label it as made in Sioux or developed in Suriname, and it's ours. But the honest truth is, no, we're not. We haven't gotten there yet, but that's the end goal. And I've been seeing from a lot of my students the potential of being able to build solutions that are so creative and that come from soup. And like I mentioned before, it takes time. In the beginning, maybe we start experimenting with a certain technology where we would never think we'll be at the level where we are today. So like I said, I'm excited to see where we'll be in a few years, because I do really believe that we can, and we will be making solutions that will be branded made in Suriname and original solutions. Yeah, and bringing it to market as well.
Yeah, to follow up a bit on that, and I think to address the devil's advocate question you asked, Chanduk, I feel like that's gonna become self-evident that you hit a wall, like a threshold that you see, like um, we can't uh, move further within the confines of the current environment. So then either something drastically will need to change, that you go outside for a different experience like Julie did with the Fab Academy, get that exposure and finding a market in somewhere in Africa or Asia, or um, drastically like change the current environment with new machines or etc. So I think
Yeah.
that wall is going to become self-evident at that point. But from what I'm feeling, at least the sentiment I'm getting is that the programs that Julie has done over the past 2-3 years kind of isn't at that stage yet that you would see those issues.
But it's igniting the spark. And
Yeah,
I think one
definitely.
of the things that Julie also mentioned is the creativity that we have will allow us to come with solutions. Like you just said, like here you were already saying like I want to have multiple inputs, and then you go to Africa and you realize like, well, okay, all of a sudden I didn't realize that I was kind
That
of
that
being ahead of the
perspective,
Yeah,
curve.
that
yeah.
perspective.
So
So
I think, so I'm not saying that you're too modest or anything. I just want to know. Like I think the example of the dyslexia, the mother who wants to work on the dyslexia of her child. I think that's a really interesting case. I also brought it up because like Rajiv was just in the comments, and the game that he made kind of this game for Instagram stories and Facebook stories, like these kind of things we're often not aware that these things are possible. So I also kind of the reason I'm asking the questions is also to kind of give people that are listening in like the idea like guys something is happening here and we're just not aware of it yet. And yeah,
yeah.
I do agree with you. I do have to be a little bit more patient.
And for example, when we're speaking about creativity, when we did the Fab Academy, we did not have all the fancy machines and the resources like everybody else. So we had to be creative to use alternative resources. For example, we had to mill into wax to make 3D objects, etc., or inverse 3D objects. We didn't have, so we end up using soap, these type of things. And in the end, we graduated even on a higher level than some of the fabrics around the world, even in Egypt. And when we got to Egypt, they were like, "Oh, you guys were the ones who made the controller board, the PCB board, and we were following your documentation." We were like, "Oh, really? Us in Suriname?" So. And when we were using our CNC machines, it was not as good as they would have it in the Netherlands, but we were able to iterate and we had to work even harder. But we have the potential, we have the creativity. There are a lot of students that have the skills to make solutions, but we need the support and the resources, and yes, the funding to get to that level. And we have to start somewhere, you know.
That's
See,
really cool.
I told you she was being modest.
Yeah,
Like if
that
other
Egypt,
countries are
that
copying
Egypt
from,
part,
yeah.
like from the documentation, I didn't know about
Yeah,
that, but yeah,
yeah.
let's put it out there. But to quickly shift gears, so your organization is called Codette, right? And that has a certain vision and mission behind it. So I want to hear from you, like, what does it mean to be a Codette, or when would you say, like, one of your students now is fully qualified to call herself a Codette?
Oh, yes. Well, I would say after they graduate the boot camp. After completing the boot camp, I would say they're a cadet because they've walked the entire path of completing the elements required to like graduate a Fab Academy. Because after completing the cadets boot camp, they're actually on a level higher than the Fab Academy actually, because we go into the embedded systems and touch a lot of like building the websites and the dashboards, etc. Those are not covered in the Fab Academy. So that's kind of like an extra training that we give the students in the business aspects of things as well. So after they graduate the boot camp, I would say they're qualified to be a cadet and they
So
can wear
would
the
this
badge.
not be a reverse opportunity for the Codettes, the graduated Codettes, to offer like these transferable skills to the Fab Academy as another job opportunity to expand the impact?
Yeah, I mean, after graduating the CUDAS bootcamp, these students are qualified to participate in Action Fab Academy. But you need to graduate from Fab Academy to be certified to work in the 50 labs around the world. But it's not like um, they would be on a lower level of not being able to complete it. They will have a very high chance of graduating Fab Academy on the first hit because the academy it allows you to come back and finish if you're not done in time. But our students will be qualified to finish in one try.
Do you have a number for us? How many people have successfully completed Fab Academy in Suriname?
Fab Academy was granted to us by the Ministry of Trade and Industry in 2019, and there were, if I'm correct, there were 8 students, and all of us graduated. Yes, all
So
of
eight
us.
And
certified Fab Academy.
yeah,
Academy.
and it,
Yeah. Oh
and
no,
all eight are
seven,
still in
seven, seven.
seven.
Sorry,
Okay,
seven.
and all of them are still in the field or not?
No, sadly to say, no.
Yeah.
Um, one of them works in another lab, and three of us are active.
Okay, that's still pretty cool. I think and what are the opportunities to how often how often could you have a Fab Academy to create more alumni at the moment?
Fab Academy is once a year, if I'm correct. Yes, but Fab Academy is about 5,000 US dollars per student for 5 months. So because it was that expensive, I decided to make the training program and get funding to train the young ladies here without the cost. The boot camp was free, because I know for sure they would not be able to afford that. But now it's not free anymore. There's a commitment fee. Obviously, it's not a lot, but the reason why I asked that is so the students commit till the end. Because a lot of students, when it gets difficult, they might drop out, and then it would be sad where someone else could have taken that position. So it's more if they would see like students winning the competitions, they would be like, "Oh, I wish I stayed." So I'm like, commit with the fee, and then when you're done, you'll see that it was worth it.
Okay, and how many people can actually register? Like how many slots do you have open?
For the boot camp,
Yeah.
for the boot camp, it's 12 students. Reason why is because our space is not as huge, and also because of the pandemic, we cannot have that many students together. So what happens now because of the pandemic, instead of having one in-lab session, we have to have two, and have a few sessions online. So it's double the work
Yeah, you
now,
gotta split
especially
it
with
up.
COVID.
It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
more load.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think we've covered a lot from your journey on starting off and kind of the grander mission that you're kind of pioneering in this Internet of Things space, robotic space, to develop a kind of new industry, or yeah, new industry, but industry that's often overlooked here. There's too much looking into traditional farming or oil, but the untapped potential of the tech that can get coupled to that is an industry in itself. And I think more people need to be exposed to those kind of opportunities as well, and building up that ecosystem. So once we're there, once we have enough codettes, how would you call a male codette? Is it also a
There
codette?
isn't. There isn't. You cannot
No.
become a Kodak. Here you go.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Just
No,
kidding.
the honest truth is, the codettes are only for young ladies, but then I got so many young gentlemen and gentlemen requesting to be part of the program that outweighed the girls. So I said for every starter, I will have two young gentlemen in the program. But then when the public sees that I have young gentlemen, they kind of like get angry that I don't know. So I did have a few of them, but now I have to go back to my original thing with just having the girls.
There's gotta come a solution. So if
Yeah,
there's any gentleman out there hearing, maybe you need to take other reins and kind of collaborate with Julie on that to develop that space
yeah,
together.
yeah.
But to go into the final section, Shanluk, I think it's time for some over unders to close off the
Yeah,
show.
definitely.
So Julie, the way this is gonna go, we're gonna, I think, looking at the time, we can each do three. We're gonna give you a topic, something very random, or on point for you, and you just tell us if you think it's something overrated or it's underrated, and maybe you can even elaborate a bit on it. Got it?
Okay.
So to kick things off, I know you've worked with this a lot. So from your perspective, is the business model canvas overrated or underrated?
Underrated. For example, like I mentioned to you with our wildlife form, I wish we just had to fill out the business model canvas because everything is in there instead of this complicated form that, requires so much but doesn't oversee our business plan. So the business canvas is very important, and I think it's underrated.
Okay, nice. Well, there's a big hype going on because you don't no longer have to understand code or write code to build websites. So no code, overrated or underrated.
Overrated. In my opinion, no code platforms is boxed in. If you want to make tweaks, especially for Internet of Things solution, a lot of the no code platform does not give you the opportunity to drag and drop your dashboards or make your apps for you. I like to be able to have the flexibility to edit my interface on my own, so I can expand or make changes instead of someone else's preloaded drag and drop buttons. Yeah.
Yeah, too much. How do you say that? Too much excess load that doesn't need to be there, in your opinion. Okay, next one for me: vlogging, overrated or underrated?
Mm, this one's, I think, underrated. I think underrated because um, for me, when you're making a video, you're sending a message. It's about making it quick and personal, genuine, and honest. So I think when you're vlogging, you can vlog everything instead of having to set up a whole professional setup to send a message. I don't know if I'm saying that clearly, but I think it's underrated.
Because you,
All
if
right.
I remember correctly, you yourself vlogged in the early days too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I tried, but it was so difficult because I didn't have the tools, you know. I just had my phone and I have done kitchen and a light, like the light from the biomaterial light. But the message had to be sent, you know.
Awesome. Okay, Jean-Luc.
Okay. Might be a weird one, but Guyana, overrated or underrated?
Guyana is my home country where I was born, actually. I can say I preferred Suriname than Guyana for the longest while, but I just went to Guyana like a week ago to get my passport renewed, and the place looks amazing. So I think underrated at this moment. If you would have asked me this like 2 weeks ago, I would say overrated, but I'll say underrated.
That's a good sign that
It's a good sign,
things are
yeah.
developing, changing
things are
the
things
outlook.
are yeah, things are developing, and I'm seeing a bright future for Guyana. It's just that the people that are poor are still pretty poor, even though the industry is developing, and that's something probably might not change. I don't know, but the country in itself is getting developed, yeah, fast.
Okay. Let's see. Last one for me: Lego toys, Lego blocks, overrated or underrated?
Overrated. Overrated.
Overrated.
Okay,
Okay.
that was short. That was quick. Should we talk to Theo
Why?
about this?
Theo would agree with me probably. Why is because I did robo kits with Legos, and it's after doing Legos, there's no way you can go into like the next stage until unless you have to like really retrain the students, you know. So that's why we start with the Arduino controller and you learn the core C programming language. So if you start with the controls instead of Lego, it will be much better. Lego is you can't really use Lego if you want to scale, you know, with
Interesting.
engineering and
Interesting.
programming.
But fair. I think that's very fair. Last one for me. Having a mentor.
Oh, if it's
Le-
overrated or underrated?
Yeah.
Oh, it's underrated. Having a mentor is so important, you know, because I feel like I had a really good mentor. That's why I'm able to achieve most of the things that I have here, that I do here. And I strive to be a mentor to all my students, and I see the need of it from all, you know, from all of them. And I think if all of us had a mentor that really cared about our best interests, we would have had a better guide to a brighter future.
So to quickly add to that, how does one, or if someone's listening, how would one go about finding a suitable mentor?
For example, getting into our training program, we automatically mentor each of the students. We mentor them. And if I see like this student might need another mentor, I would probably reach out to someone that I know to continue to mentor them or guide them in that area that they're in. You know, if they're stronger at mentoring them in that field. So that's from my opinion how I would do it. Yeah. I don't know any other way or how anyone else will do it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So
How have you done? Do you have a mentor actually, Diego?
Yes.
No,
Oh,
no,
Diego.
oh,
Giolino.
me.
Yeah, yeah, Diego. Do you
Yes,
have a
Diego.
mentor?
Yeah.
So you have formal mentors and informal mentors. I think I have more informal mentors than someone to, that I go to particularly like this person is my mentor and we have a understanding of a mentor-mentee relationship in that sense. Over the years, I have considered, certain individuals for a specific goal, a mentor, and I go to them for advice, etc. But it hasn't been that there's one or two specific people that I go to every time. So it's kind of more like a network of informal mentors than a singular mentor, if that makes sense.
So I quickly want to drop you if we still have a little bit time. I do want to discuss this because I think it's not, and Julie also said it, like it's still a bit underrated. And there's certain aspects of mentorship that people really don't understand, that your mentor puts you in positions
Yes.
that you would
Yeah.
normally not get into when you are on your own. And
Yes.
you don't value them at that point in time, but like afterwards you realize, wait a minute, due
Yes.
to that thing that happened 3 years ago, I'm actually in contact with this person doing this project. So I think that's one of the things that I do want to like. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fixed mentor for like 20 years, but actually having somebody that kind of, and just like Julie said, with the best intentions, I think that's very important as well.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's very much a benefit because for years I was like, yeah, I don't need that. Or actually, for years I was searching for it, but I didn't know how to search for it. And then over the past, I think 3, 4 years, I started getting these opportunities, and now I'm also, I like yourself. I'm much more of an informal mentor kind of situation, but now I'm actually formalizing my mentorships.
Yeah,
That's
I
good.
think I've,
If I
yeah,
may
sorry,
ask,
Julie.
do you guys have students that you mentor or apprentice?
I'm a terrible mentor, so I have to clear that out. I'm a terrible, like I'm a great speaker. I'm a great trainer, but I'm a terrible coach.
Mm.
So
Have you
the
had a bad
only
experience?
no, no, no. I'm just terrible at it. Like if the person is not in my direct proximity, if this person is not in my direct environment, I can't be a mentor for you. So if somebody sees me on the internet and they reach out to me and tell me like, "Hey, can you be my mentor?" My answer is like, "Sorry, no. It's nothing personal to you. I just don't have that personality." So within my company, yes.
Mm.
So if somebody works within my company, and I know that at least 2 or 3 times a week we get together and I mentor them through stuff, yes, that's something I can do. I can mentor interns, I can mentor like team members, those kind of things. But if it's somebody from the outside looking in, even if they're willing to pay me to mentor them, it, I'm not the right fit for that. And I'm very well aware of my shortcomings in that sense. So I just say, like, I teach, I speak, and what I'm trying to do now is to make the commitment that I have a course where multiple people at the same time can get my attention and I can give my attention to them. And for that I'm actually have taken on the mentor. So I've decided like last year I need for
Oh,
me to
for
be
the
able
course
for
specifically.
me if I want to do a course and want to help people, I want to help 10,000 people make 10,000 US dollars. If I want to do that, it's better to get mentored by somebody who has already done that. And then that's why I
Yeah.
reached out last year. And the thing that caught me off guard, the thing that really caught me off guard, and I'm not going to say who it is because most likely within the next year he will be a guest on the show. But the thing that surprised me the most about him was that this is somebody who's runs a, I'm not sure, 8 figure business, maybe even nine. And he spent a lot of time. I wasn't paying or purchasing anything from him. And he was just asking me questions and making me think. And after every question, I gave an answer, and there were follow up questions. And he was just really making me think. And he was doing, I mean, we're talking about at least an hour worth of Instagram DMs going back and forth without a single sales pitch. There at no time was a situation that I felt that I was overstepping my boundaries. I was asking him too much. He was actually the one asking me. And and that kind of, yeah, that was special for me. And I wanted to understand, like, how does somebody that has so much, so little time, has so much to do in a day, has over dozens of students on online courses, how does that person just put aside everything and spends an hour chatting away with me on Instagram DMs? I was completely blown away by it. So if I can figure out how he did that, and I can do that on my own, actually helping out people without ever having to give that sales pitch saying like, okay, but this is where the free stuff stops and now you have to pay me. If I can figure that one out, that really is something that I want to learn.
That'd be interesting to figure out. Yeah, definitely. I do want to preface. I do think there is a nuanced difference between a mentor and a coach, right? I think I have had this conversation a few years ago, because yeah, coaching is like a more formalized relationship for a specific skill or task to get better at that. And usually, as you said, it is you uh, it's more straightforward to pay someone for that and get better at it. But a mentee mentor relationship is kind of more off script. Of course you can formalize it, but usually from what I've seen, at least, those happen organically if it kind of clicks. And then I'm not sure how the formalizing goes, but you can maybe speak more on that, Jean-Luc.
It's kind of getting more intertwined because, like, of all the people that are in this space, like they're like, I know at least 20 people that could help me set up a professional international online course, like people that I've met in San Diego for the past 5 to 10 years. There are like at least 20 people I could turn to and be like, I could pay them for them to coach me. But why do I take this specific person? It's because I also see the mentoring aspect. It's because aside from the coaching, there's actually a mentoring part as well. I think it's similar with somebody like Marvin Polak, which you all know. Marvin Polak is kind of the same thing. He's the impact coach, but he doesn't only coach, he also mentors. Like inadvertently, he will go out of his way, out of his coaching. Of course, it's part of his coaching routine, but he will go out of his way to mentor people, even though he's a coach. So I think the lines have a kind of blurred, and I think the intent matters. Like
Yeah.
if you want to, coach is formal, like you said, like I pay you to coach me, but uh, not all mentors are coaches, not all coaches are mentors, but there's definitely a gray area where those
Yeah,
two
there's a
overlap.
nuance to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, yeah, you can even find mentorship in books for some
Yeah,
people.
or in NFTs. Just kidding. Just kidding. Sorry, Julie. Sorry. so,
Uh, but with
so
that being
Julie,
said,
yeah.
yeah, go
So
ahead, Chandru.
Julie,
Close off.
to kind of close off, you just gave us a little, like a little sneak peek into two programs that you run. If people are like interested, they want to learn the basics of coding, whether it's for web or they want to actually learn embedded systems. How can they reach out to you?
Um, we have registration opening on Codette's Facebook page. We also have Instagram, um, and we have Twitter, and they can just register. This registration form is opened all year. So they register, they get put on a waiting list, and when it's time for the new cycle, they get called for interviews. And the interviews are open for 2 weeks long. So you get called, you get interviewed, and you get put on the waiting list to see if you're going to get selected or not. Yeah. There's a probation period of 2 weeks as well, because all students that come through the program goes through a trial period to see if they're capable or if it's really for them and if they're determined and able to reach the requirements to be in the program. Yeah. So check my Facebook page, Codette.org on Facebook. Yeah.
Awesome. You've heard it. Don't be shy to, you know, hit Julie up the codettes, and don't be intimidated by the 2 week probation period. Because if you don't try, you'll never know. And there's lots of opportunities to learn. And even if you don't qualify for the first time, try again. And,
Yes.
you never know. Sometimes it's just not the right time or wrong place. But with that being said, Julie, thank you so much for joining us on Social Convos. It's been a blast, and especially to bring shine some more light in this particular space. More people need to hear about it. More people need to know
Yes.
about it. So thanks for doing that. And
Thank you for having me.
we will keep a close eye on what developments you are doing, definitely.
Yes.
With that being
All right.
said, Shanluk, any last words to close us off?
Julie, thank you so much for everybody tuning in or listening or viewing this podcast. Thank you for joining in as well. This was Social Confos. See you back next week. Same place, same time. Bye bye.